The Galactic Council chamber loomed vast and imposing, a circular arena of towering obsidian pillars and holographic banners displaying the sigils of 200 species. Representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations sat in their designated places, murmuring in a chorus of dialects and frequencies. The air was thick with tension, an almost tangible thing that crackled through the chamber as they awaited the proceedings to begin. At the center of the room, on an elevated platform, stood Council Leader Verkan, his bioluminescent skin pulsing in slow waves of turquoise. A seasoned statesman of the Seraphis race, Verkan had witnessed centuries of political maneuvering, but today, unease coiled in his gut. He tapped his clawed fingers against the metal railing, observing the human delegate with studied caution. Captain Elias Grant sat rigid in his seat, clad in the crisp formal uniform of the United Terran Federation. His expression was unreadable, his blue-gray eyes scanning the chamber with quiet calculation. Though he was alone among the alien dignitaries, there was no fear in his posture. He knew why he was here. They all did. The Council had convened for one reason: to determine humanity's fate. Verkan cleared his throat, his voice resonating across the chamber. This session is now in order. We address the matter of repeated human insubordination. Their actions have disregarded Council mandates and disrupted galactic stability. Their unchecked expansion encroaches upon regulated space. Their military continues unauthorized mobilizations. The question before us is clear. Do we impose strict sanctions or do we take further measures? A murmur rippled through the assembly before a figure rose from his seat. Ambassador Zaldar of the Zorvax Empire, a towering reptilian with emerald scales and burning amber eyes, grinned, flashing rows of serrated teeth. Further measures, indeed, Zaldar said, his deep voice curling with amusement. Humans are stubborn, incapable of understanding their place in this galaxy. They mistake our patience for weakness. I say we strip them of their colonial holdings and force their compliance. They will learn to obey. Elias exhaled slowly, suppressing the urge to react. He had known this was coming. The Zorvax had long resented humanity's rise, seeing them as an upstart species disrupting the old order. Verkan turned to him. Captain Grant, humanity stands accused of violating diplomatic agreements and defying Council authority. How does the Terran Federation respond? Elias stood, adjusting his uniform. With the truth, his voice was measured but firm. Humanity sought peace. We adhered to treaties, extended goodwill, and abided by Council rulings, even when they placed us at a disadvantage. And yet, what did we receive in return? Sabotage, betrayal, blockades against our colonies, assassinations of our envoys. He let the words hang, allowing the weight of them to settle. You call us defiant. I call us survivors. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The evidence was irrefutable. Reports of Zorvax-led covert operations had surfaced, yet the Council had done nothing. The silence of the other great powers had spoken louder than any declaration. Zaldar let out a guttural laugh. Ah, the righteous indignation of humans. You act as though you are innocent, but we know what lurks beneath your words. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. You are dangerous, reckless, a species that refuses to be tamed. And that is why we cannot allow you to continue unchecked. Elias tilted his head. Because we refuse to kneel? Because you refuse to understand your limits. A sharp chime interrupted them, drawing all eyes to the central podium where a transmission request blinked. Verkan hesitated before nodding. Proceed. The holographic form of Admiral Victor Kane materialized, clad in the stark black uniform of the Terran Defense Initiative. His presence alone shifted the energy in the room. Kane was a man who commanded wars, not negotiations. His expression was unreadable as he spoke. This message is for all members of the Galactic Council. His voice carried no anger, no desperation, just cold, unshakable finality. As of this moment, the United Terran Federation withdraws from all diplomatic agreements. Humanity will no longer recognize this council's authority. Our colonies, our fleets, and our people will no longer be subject to your rulings. He let the words settle before delivering the final blow. Effective immediately, humanity stands alone. The chamber erupted. Some representatives gasped, others shouted in protest. Zalvar's expression twisted in shock before morphing into a snarl. "This is madness," he roared. "You dare sever ties with the ruling body of the galaxy? You will be crushed." Elias did not flinch. He merely deactivated the communication link, cutting the council off from Earth's leaders entirely. When he turned back to face them, his expression was one of icy resolve. "You wanted to test us," he said. "Now you'll see what happens when humanity stops talking." Without another word, Elias Grant turned on his heel and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the Galactic Council descended into chaos. The UNSC Dauntless cut through the void, a specter in the darkness. No running lights, no transmissions, just silent, calculated movement as it glided through enemy-controlled space. The ship, a top-of-the-line stealth cruiser, had been built for this kind of operation. Unseen, unstoppable, and unforgiving. Standing on the bridge, Captain Adrian Wolf watched the tactical display with an expression carved from stone. A dozen red markers pulsed on the screen. Zorvak's blockade ships forming an iron ring around Aegis 4, one of humanity's most isolated colonies. The blockade had been in place for months, strangling supply lines, ensuring the colony's slow demise. Thousands of civilians were running out of food, medicine, and air. Tonight, that ended. "All systems green, Captain," Lieutenant Marcus Hale reported, his voice a calm counterpoint to the storm brewing beneath their feet. "Weapons primed. Strike teams ready." Wolf nodded, eyes never leaving the tactical screen. He had received his orders directly from Admiral Kane. Eliminate the blockade. Make a statement. Leave nothing standing. A flicker of motion. One of the Zorvak ships, a heavy cruiser, adjusted its position, its scanner sweeping the space where Dauntless drifted unseen. They suspected something. It didn't matter. Begin. The first shots came from nowhere. A salvo of kinetic lances tore through the lead cruiser's hull before its shields even registered an attack. Explosions bloomed in the vacuum, silent but devastating. The ship shuddered, its engines flickering, before it split apart in a violent, twisting inferno. Panic rippled through the Zorvak's formation. The blockade had been in place for so long that they had grown complacent, never expecting an assault. Now, as their ship scrambled to react, Dauntless was already moving, slipping between them like a predator among prey. "Hell jumpers away," Hale confirmed. From the underside of the Dauntless, drop pods detached, streaking toward the largest enemy vessel. Inside, Commander Eric Voss and his team braced against a violent descent, gripping their rifles as the pods screamed through the void. The moment they impacted the enemy hull, explosive charges breached the outer plating, and the Helljumpers poured into the ship like a tidal wave of death. The corridors were tight, designed for the massive frames of Zorvak's warriors, but Voss and his men moved with practiced precision. Their rifles barked, each shot surgically placed, dropping enemy combatants before they could react. The Zorvaks fought back with plasma weapons, their energy bolts searing through the air, but the Helljumpers' adaptive armor absorbed the worst of it. Voss led the charge, his combat knife finding the throat of a Zorvak's officer as they cleared the command deck. Blood, thick and black, splattered across the walls. He ripped the officer's access chip from his belt and slammed it into the terminal. "Control room secured," he relayed. "Uploading override now." Back on the Dauntless, Hale watched as the stolen codes hijacked the Zorvak's battle network. Their ships, still scrambling, suddenly found themselves blind. Sensors jammed, targeting systems disrupted. "Captain, the enemy fleet is in disarray," Hale reported. "Then let's finish this," Wolf said, voice like steel. The Dauntless uncloaked, its full arsenal now bared. The Zorvak's ships, already crippled by the first assault, had no time to react as torpedoes streaked forward. Each warhead a promise of destruction. The blockade shattered, ships breaking apart, debris scattering in all directions. Some attempted to retreat, their engines burning hot, but long-range railguns cut them down before they could jump to safety. On the surface of Aegis IV, thousands of human colonists looked up and saw their sky ignite. They had spent months under siege, their fate uncertain. Now, they watched as their enemy burned. A message was sent directly to the colony's governor. The blockade is broken. Reinforcements are en route. Humanity does not forget its own. The battle was over in less than an hour. Wolf stood on the bridge, staring at the wreckage that drifted through space. Among the debris, the shattered husk of a Zorvax dreadnought floated, its once mighty form now a lifeless ruin. A statement had been made. "Captain," Hale said, breaking the silence, "we have an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council." Wolf smirked. "Let them wait." Far across the stars, in the heart of the Galactic Council chamber, Council Leader Verkin received the report in stunned silence. Around him, the assembly erupted into chaos. The humans had not pleaded for negotiations. They had not protested the blockade. They had not sent envoys. They had simply erased their enemies. For the first time, the Council understood the truth. Humanity was done talking. The war had changed everything. In the vast, gilded halls of the Galactic Council, the air was thick with tension. Council Leader Verkin stood at the central podium, his usual composed demeanor shattered by the weight of what had transpired. The chamber, once a place of measured diplomacy, had become a battlefield of accusations and panic. The council members spoke in harsh tones, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of fear and disbelief. "The humans have gone too far," Ambassador Zaldar roared, his reptilian features contorted in fury. "They do not seek balance or order. They seek domination. They seek survival," Verkin corrected, though his voice lacked conviction. The attack on the Zorvax blockade had been swift, merciless. The entire fleet wiped from existence in less than an hour. The humans had struck with absolute precision, and now the Council was left scrambling to determine their next move. Across the stars, in the heart of human space, Admiral Victor Kane stood on the bridge of the UNSC Warspite, watching a holographic projection of the battle's aftermath. Wreckage drifted like scattered bones, silent memorials to the fleets that had once held humanity in check. He traced a gloved hand along the console, his mind already working through the inevitable retaliation. "They'll come," Captain Adrian Wolf said beside him, his voice unreadable. "The Council can't afford to let this stand. The Zorvax won't stop." Kane exhaled slowly. "Then we prepare." The consequences of their actions were unfolding as expected. The Zorvax had called for an emergency military summit, demanding retaliation. The Avaxi Dominion and the Red Hari Syndicate hesitated, unwilling to throw themselves into a war they weren't prepared to win. The cracks in the Council's unity had begun to show, and Kane knew that was their greatest advantage. Back on Aegis IV, Commander Eric Voss walked through the ruined outskirts of the colony, his boots crunching against broken stone. The battle had freed them, but the scars remained. Buildings stood in shattered ruin, and the air still carried the acrid scent of charred metal. Civilians watched in silence, their eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something harder. They had learned the same lesson Earth had centuries ago. No one was coming to save them. Voss approached a makeshift command post where Governor Elias Reed stood, a weary man who had fought tooth and nail to keep his people alive. The two men exchanged a silent nod before Reed spoke. "They'll retaliate. They'll try," Voss corrected. "But we're not alone anymore." Reed glanced back at the gathered colonists, many of whom had already begun salvaging materials rebuilding. There was no fear in their movements, only resolve. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, and in doing so, the Council had forged something unstoppable. Across the galaxy, in the shadow of the Council's crumbling authority, human fleets moved like unseen phantoms, their technology evolving, their tactics shifting. No longer bound by diplomacy, they were now the architects of their own fate. And for the first time in history, the Council feared them. The Galactic Council was dying, and everyone in the chamber knew it. The once great assembly, which had ruled over interstellar affairs for centuries, now stood on the brink of collapse. What had once been a hall of reason and diplomacy had devolved into bitter infighting. Accusations flew between species, alliances shattered in real time, and the air crackled with desperation. Council leader Verkin stood at the center of it all, his bioluminescent skin dim with exhaustion. He had spent decades maintaining balance among the galaxy's powers, ensuring that war never tipped too far in one direction. Now, everything he had built was crumbling beneath him. "They have forced our hand," Ambassador Zaldar bellowed, slamming a clawed fist against his podium. His reptilian eyes blazed with fury. "The humans have ignored our decrees, defied our authority, and now they wage war without fear. If we do not strike back, the Council is nothing but a relic of the past." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber, but it was not unanimous. Chancellor Oris of the Avaxi Dominion, a race known for their meticulous neutrality, leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "And if we strike back, then what?" Oris asked, his voice calm but edged with warning. "We have already seen what the humans are capable of. They do not fight like we do. They do not negotiate like we do. If we engage in open war, we will bleed for every system we take, and there is no guarantee we will win. They are one species." Zaldar snapped. "We are the might of the Galactic Order." "No," Verkin said at last, his voice quiet but firm. "We were." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Across the galaxy, the war had taken its toll, not just on humanity's enemies, but on the very structure of the Council itself. The Zorvax fleets had been shattered in every engagement, their supply lines severed. The Avaxi Dominion had withdrawn from the war effort entirely, unwilling to gamble their forces on what was beginning to look like a losing battle. Other member states, once firm in their commitment to the Council's authority, now hesitated, questioning whether the humans were truly the enemy, or simply the inevitable force of change. And then the final blow came. A holographic transmission flickered into existence at the center of the chamber. Admiral Victor Kane stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his expression devoid of arrogance, yet carrying an undeniable weight of authority. "This council," he began, his voice even and cold, "no longer holds dominion over humanity. Your decrees are meaningless, your mandates irrelevant. You have proven that you are incapable of governing justly, and now the galaxy watches as you crumble under your own weakness." The Council erupted in protest, threats, desperate denials. Kane simply waited. "You sought to control us, to keep us in line. You failed." He leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering just enough to drive the words deeper. "We do not seek conquest. We do not seek extermination. But if you come for us again, we will end you." The transmission cut. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, without a word, the Red Hari delegation stood and left. Others followed, one by one. Species that had once sworn allegiance to the Council walked away, unwilling to die for a crumbling empire. Verkin closed his eyes. He had known this day would come. The Galactic Council was dead, and humanity had buried it.